she's not disrupted by it.
Exactly.
It's a backup.
Exactly, and she has actually 2 different call-in options with TK as a means of mitigating those situations. So that's why we thought that Sharon
one of them
was
that Phoenix that you have that is mine.
I don't have anybody. I don't have anybody.
Phoenix go?
That wasn't. No, I have my.
Where's my common Phoenix?
I have no idea.
I'll just get some from someone else.
But because you got your box back. So.
Yeah, my cool stuff.
Sounds like we broke up. You got your box stuff back, right?
Yeah, I got my shoebox that I left at your place.
You found it on the porch, right?
And on the mystical hunt for Tom's common Phoenix, we're live with the Metal Lab this week. I'm going to lead in with, by the way, I am sorry for the condition of my voice. I was at AEW Revolution this weekend. I spent 4 hours screaming, and I still have yet to recover. So it was good old time.
You were kidnapped. That was the reason.
Yeah, kidnapped. Oh no, they're taking me to wrestling, guys. Whatever am I going to do? Don't take me to wrestling.
So awesome.
Jason's not available, so we got Harvey Firestein to host the episode. Is that a dated reference? Anybody get that?
I didn't get it.
I'm, of course, joined this week by Tom.
Hello, everyone.
And Mike.
Hello.
And it's exciting news this week, so let's get to our Week in Hero Clicks. It's pretty short for, I think, myself and Tom.
Yep.
So, Mike, what'd you get up to this Week in Hero Clicks?
Practice.
Mm-hmm. I hear that makes your team better.
It makes your team better. So, practice. That's pretty much it. Played some games on Thursday. Emily and I played some games yesterday. Practice.
I bailed on you for a trip to Pennsylvania. Sorry about that.
No, that's quite all right. We understand. Again, right? It was that we all wanted to do it, but it wasn't like a quick. If it was like a 3 or 4 hour drive, sure. But I think it ends up being more like a 5 or 6 hour.
It's like it's like 8 round. Like it was 4 plus, and of course it's an X factor when we're traveling across the border with Mike White.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? You got a very common name, I hear.
Yeah, really common. We're gonna have to take you into this glass room over here. That'll be fun. That's always fun.
Interesting border thing before I let you go is I got stuck in the high security line because the printer for where they do the photo check at Pearson didn't print. So this is why I show up 2 hours early for the airplane. It's just all right. Sorry, Mike, I interrupted you.
No, quite all right. That was really it. Again, just practice. Filling around with all the different things. Of course, Captain America stuff is out there. How much of it do you want to play? How much do you not want to play? I still love Mojo, and yeah.
All right. Good. Awesome. So with that, we're gonna get straight into Justice League Unlimited preview season. Oh, what a great time! What a great time! Preview season gives us something to talk about.
Do you want us to trade introducing dials here for the sake of your voice?
I would love you guys to save my voice for that, so I'm gonna go ahead and just do this. We have to start. Let me just make sure I got this right here. I don't have it right. There we go. We're gonna start with Blight. Tom, tell everybody about Blight.
All right, I'm going to call them up in the evidence thread here because I find it easier to read than the page. So, Blight. Blight, we have a 70-point figure that has lots of good keywords, including Gotham City Underworld, Future Monster, and Politician. Double team abilities, something we're seeing a lot of in this set from what little we've seen so far. He's got Batman Enemy and Underworld. And what you get for your 70 points is as follows. First of all, you get a 6-click dial that starts out invulnerable, falling to toughness, and then some end dial, low defense willpower, classic pulse wave clicks, easy to KO, but if you don't KO them, you'll regret it. On the attack dial, we start with 2 clicks of Psychic Blast and end with 2 clicks of Pulse Wave, as I said before. And in between the two, you've got RCE on a 3 damage for both clicks. So that has the potential for some outstanding damage output on those RCE clicks, or maybe you just look to lock in your attack values. We're starting out with a special power on speed and a special power on damage for the first 2 clicks. The speed one being Sidestep Stealth, and the damage power being Exploit and Shape Change. That gives way to just normal Sidestep for the middle clicks and then Force Blast at the end. So gotta love that Force Blast Pulse Wave click at the end there, hit everybody and knock them all back. Potential for a 4 damage single target Pulse Wave on your very last click, which is very cool. No willpower, no improved movement, but we do have a trait. The trait reads as follows: Poison. When Blight uses it, he has improved targeting. Elevated terrain characters and opposing characters within 3 squares in line of fire are considered to be adjacent. So he's seeing everybody within 3 squares, ignoring characters and elevated terrain, not ignoring other terrain types if they would block him. He has, after resolutions, give a rad token. Man, it's radical. To each character damaged this way. That doesn't have a token with his name. In other words, if you take damage from his poison, give them a rad token. And that leads us to characters with rad tokens decrease their defense value by -1 and are dealt 2 damage by poison instead of 1. Notably, not even just his own poison, but rather just poison in general. So if you've got Blight centering a poison-heavy team or centering a team with some poison on the sideline, get some rad tokens out there, call in some extra poisoners, that damage could really add up. And if you can manage to get poison through against someone with reducers, then after that, then if they're on toughness, let's say, then you're still able to get some stuff through on them. So that's pretty cool. Otherwise, just use what you get dial. Nothing never goes above a 10 attack, but spends most of his time there. His damage values, though, are really impressive at a constant 3 that leads to a 4. Very good for a 70.4 or 6-click figure, I should say. Not the most mobile, but I love the fact that it's penetrating damage from close or far, and it's poison off the top. What do you think, Mike?
It's a really interesting figure. I like the representation, having been a fan of Batman Beyond. This is straight out of that, especially early episodes, straight out of that. Love the poison power. I think, like you pointed out, the fact that it's for anybody's poison. So if you could build up a team with a lot of poison on it. Also, there's no way to get rid of the rad token. It doesn't say anything about removing when healing or anything. So you just got to pull off that 1 poison, and you've got a -1 on a person's defense for the rest of the game. That can be huge. I think we've all missed by 1 enough times in this game to know that a -1 modifier in defense is pretty sweet. He also, again, with the combination of the stealth and the shape change, he's got a good way of keeping himself alive a little bit more, because he's very soft defensively, obviously, with only a 17 and invulnerability. There's way many ways to get around that, but at least he has ways of potentially escaping it. I love his keywords. I think this figure, I feel like he's got some of the mixings of something that could be fun in the meta, but ultimately, because of his weak defense and point value, I feel like he's just outside of that range. Like, I mean, Tom already pointed out, like, such great damage values, especially that 4 damage at the end. He does have a healthy enough dial. I mean, you got to hit him for, what, 5?
I mean, you could deal him 6.
Yeah, you got
notwithstanding the invulnerable.
Yeah,
or so with the invulnerable.
But 6 is not. I mean, I've been playing against Emily's Vulture team a lot, so 6 damage to me seems like really easy to happen because Vulture's a jerk. But 6 isn't quite so easy. You know what I'm saying? He's just in that little funky little zone where
and shape change, right? And stealth, making it harder to get rid of the shape change or the invulnerability if you've got an outwitter.
Exactly, and I think with the keywords that he has, and with figures we haven't yet seen that are going to come from this set, I think he's like meta light, maybe. I think smarter people than me could totally turn this guy into something.
What do you think, Jason?
The only thing I kind of wanted to add is I want to see who has the Batman enemy team ability in the set, just to see what kind of extra attack he could get with that kind of mediocre 10 attack. If there's somebody who can really bounce that up, great. I also like the fact that his 2 pulse wave clicks come with Force Blast. Which, is a great combination to get just a little bit of extra damage on Force Blast in the right positioning. Especially if you're near elevated terrain. Just watching people's faces go, I take how much? That's a feeling.
Like he can really clear a crowd. I would just say that with the current game where we can actually look at the back of the card, it's going to be hard to, you know what I'm saying? It's going to be hard to get there is really the only problem with it. It looks like such a sweet click, and things, crazy things can happen. But I feel like that's the one of the downsides to him is we can all look at the back of the card. He's pretty easy to dispatch in that way. You know what I'm saying?
So, I mean, I do. I would say that the flip side of that is that if your opponent doesn't have the ability to take him out in one go or to finish him off if they knock him out of those clicks, it's further incentive for them not to attack him to those clicks at all, and you're leaving him on the board to keep doing what he's doing. So
Which is poison.
Again, he's a really interesting figure in that sort of middle zone of with the right stuff. Who knows?
We should probably mention, by the way, that we're talking the previews. I mean, I was reading off the evidence thread, but these previews went up on the site of our friends over at 2 Clicks from KO. So yeah, check out 2 Clicks from KO's website. Yep. This is where they've done an article with both the previews and their own nice little write-ups of these guys.
Yeah, 2clicksfromko.wordpress.com. We have the link on our Facebook. I got to remember to put it in the comments or in the description below before we end the show. All right.
Want to take us through Solomon Grundy there, Mike?
Sure thing. Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday. He's got a lot of good keywords as well. Gotham City Underworld, Injustice League, Injustice Society, Brute, Monster, Mystical. Monster, Mystical. Mojo's gotten...
Uh-oh. I think we just lost Mike.
Uh-oh. You're right. I'm sure he'll be back. Want me to jump in the meantime?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Mike can do two when he gets back. Yeah, Mike did get through all the keywords there, and lots of good ones, including the much desired Monster and Mystical ones. He is indomitable. He has a 75-point figure with the Injustice League team ability. This is the one team ability I can never remember, but it's the one that
wasn't it. Hi, I'm back. And wasn't
you're back. Good. You can take back over again.
Yeah, wasn't it the one where you used to be able to? It was almost like that Masters of Evil one where you could,
but they changed it a little while ago.
Yeah.
No, it's Brotherhood now.
Yes.
So when you hit, if you roll 10 or higher, then you remove a token after you're done. So he could potentially stay on the attack. All right, Mike, back to you.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Somehow I put my computer to sleep. That's pretty funny. Like I said, Monster and Mystical. All right, Mojo has a new friend. So he's got the trait Injustice League. So much like the one we saw, Justice League Unlimited from Batman Animated Set, this is like the antithesis of that. So at the beginning of your turn, roll a d6. If you roll a 6, give an action token to opposing character that's 100 points or less. He's got another trait, the Life and Death of Solomon Grundy. Free, turn Solomon Grundy dial to the same click number of a different color. The first time Solomon Grundy would be KO'd, instead turn him to either click number 1, and he can't use this trait this game. It's protected pulse wave. The nice part about that is it's not saying that you go to click 1 of the other dial, like some other ones will do, like with Hawkman, Hawkgirl. This basically says you pick a click 1 and they live on that. So that's kind of nice. He's got 2 different sets of dials. Each one is 5 clicks long. And he's at 75 points. And what is he, in a rare slot? Yeah, he's number 50. He's in a rare slot. He's what you would expect from a Solomon Grundy. He looks like a bruiser, but what's nice about it is they sort of got to do both aspects of what he could do split between the 2 dials. So you've got one dial that's sort of him lumbering along, which is more of the tie-up piece and can soak up damage because he's got things like sidestep, super strength, invincible, and he's got empower on those first 2 clicks. So he's much more of a maybe somebody who stands next to somebody who has mastermind. That kind of an idea. He's more of a slow-moving damage soaker. He goes into plasticity with impervious and steel energy. The nice part, too, is he's got close combat expert on those clicks, which means you can boost some attack values to increase your chance of actually hitting and stealing energy and healing up. The other click is clearly the way more in-your-face attacking because he's got an 11 attack almost all the way down the dial and pretty solid defense values, 18 on the first 3 clicks, 4 damage on the first 2 clicks, charge for 2, and then flurry for 3. So he's a pretty straightforward Solomon Grundy. I like him. He's interesting. I don't think we're going to see him in terms of competitive, really. I think there's way more things out there for 75 points that do whatever. But saying that, the trait of him not dying the first time is always very useful. We know how many figures now are coming along with this whole they don't die the first time. So there's always value to that. So you can't ignore that. And at 75 points, he can still call in some pretty solid things ID card wise, and with some good keywords. So a cool Solomon Grundy, not my favorite one that I've ever seen, but solid representation.
What do you think, Tom?
I like him too. I think that Mike covered it pretty well. I find it hard to imagine that we'll see much of him in competitive. Just the nature of being a close combat lumbering brute who doesn't ignore terrain when he moves is a pretty tricky. It's kind of a hard sell in this day and age of HeroClix. The fact that he is hard to finally KO is cool. But he's not that hard to get there in the first place. I mean, to the previous, we were talking about the fact that it's not that hard to deal, 6 damage through invulnerability when we were talking about Blight. Well, here it's 5 damage with an equally outwittable opening defense, unless, they're both outwittable, and the one is penetrating damage sensitive. And he doesn't have, unlike Blight, the benefit of shape change or stealth to give him any extra protection, nor does he have range to be able to keep people far away and take advantage in that way. So for 5 points more, I don't know that he's that much harder to KO unless you just don't have any way of getting through his reducers. And if you don't, then he's pretty easy to stay away from for the most part. So, I mean, I think that he's a pretty good representation of Solomon Grundy. I think it'll be fun to play. And I think Mike's point is well made that as a tank, especially as a mastermind fodder tank, I love the Injustice League trait. I just think it's awesome. But I'm sure there'll be other people in the set that are better and have it as well. In fact, we may have already seen one. So I think that he's fun and interesting, but I don't think that he's really pegging the needle for me in the competitive game.
Yeah, I feel in Sealed he's going to kind of perform in a similar way to the Immortal Hulk, but like not as dominatingly. I feel, but I think one thing I do want to point out is doesn't matter who's got it. This Justice League thing, it could all of a sudden completely change the flow of your opponent's turn if you just roll that 6. So never forget it.
That's real good.
Yeah.
Real good. Well, I can take us through Gorilla Grodd if you would like.
I would love you to.
It's a lot of words.
There's a lot of words.
A lot of words for only 40 or 10 points. I'll try to move it along.
I don't want to do it.
So here we have our first chase, I believe. And indeed, the chases here seem to be reflective of the chases that we saw in Batman Animated. This time it's going to be the Injustice League Super Friends style chases. And our first one up is Gorilla Grodd, who has a hilarious sculpt. Also, Gorilla Grodd has 2-point values, 40 and 10 points. 10 points, crazy. With a 4 range, he's indomitable and otherwise normal symbols. He's rocking the Injustice League, Legion of Doom, Animal, and Ruler keywords. So there you go. Ruler is the new black, and I think Animal's on the rise too. There's lots of good animals, and there's tons of good rulers. So 2 very, very usable keywords there. And this is a very usable figure for those keywords, as we're about to find out. He has several traits. Let's start out with the Sideline Active trait, which is the mirror image of the Sideline Active trait that the Batman Animated Series chases had, which were the ones where when you have a crit miss or you miss 3 times in a turn, you can bring one out to help you out. Well, here's the opposite. Friendly characters have free. If this character critical hit this turn, or made a 3rd attack this turn to hit all opposing targets, plays a character from your sideline that can use Let's Cause Trouble trait adjacent on his blue starting line. So in the case of Grodd, this will give you 1 click of life. And at the beginning of your turn, if Gorilla Grodd started the game due to this, due to the Let's Cause Trouble trait, roll a d6, and on a 4 through 6, he returns to your sideline. Notably, he's not KO'd; he just returns to your sideline. But
which is important because if you can pull it off again,
yeah, exactly,
you can do it again with him.
Absolutely, and he's not giving up points when he goes back to your sideline that way. Though if he goes back to your sideline the old-fashioned way by getting KO'd, he's still giving up, I assume, 10 points because he started on his blue line, right?
He's full-blown removed from the game if you KO him.
Exactly.
Totally worth that gamble.
I'll say. He's got a second trait, which is Curses the Flash. You foiled me again. Characters that can use hypersonic speed modify attack +2 when they're attacking only Gorilla Grodd. And characters that can use hypersonic speed modify defense +2 when Gorilla Grodd attacks them. Fair enough. Once again, we've seen that before in the animated series. And then we have Revenge on Gorilla City trait, which is free. Once per turn for all characters with this effect, roll a d6. On a 3 to 4, give each opposing characters within 4 squares of Gorilla Grodd that occupies hindering terrain an action token. And on a 5 or 6, deal each opposing character within 4 squares of Gorilla Grodd that occupies hindering terrain 1 penetrating damage. So it's just a free effect as long as they're opposing characters occupying hindering within 6. Notably, it doesn't say printed hindering, so this will absolutely work with your smoke and stuff, I believe, unless anyone wants to contradict me here. Jay's not here.
No, if it doesn't say printed, hindering smoking is hindering.
Yep.
So there you go. That's a great way to token some people up potentially or dealing some penetrating damage. And finally, we have a speed power. He's got leap climb and mind control. And when he uses leap climb to move 4 squares or less after after resolutions, he can either use mind control or quake at no cost. So that's a pretty nifty little package. For 40 points, you get 5 clicks of life. You think that the last one's going to be a stop click because we're just programmed to see it, but it's not. Still, all the same, he does have his very own smoke cloud, which works nicely with the Revenge on Gorilla City trait, so that he doesn't even need a special ring to be doing it, although I suppose that would be a better use of it. And for 40 points, that's a pretty decent little dial of leap, climb, mind control, and empower, backed up by invulnerability. It's so cheap and it fits so well, but let's be honest, I think you're going to see an awful lot of him at 10 points, because for 10 points, you get 1 click of life, but what a click it is. You do get the leap, climb, mind control, and the leap, climb, and then mind control. Adding that, along with some super strength and empower onto your ruler teams, along with the ability to do passive damage to everybody who's around. I mean, it's pretty great. Backed up with Indomitable. I don't need to say a lot more. I don't know how much you want for 10 points. If you want more than this, then you're smoking something. What do you think? Jason?
Me, I love him. Immediately thinking of him on the sideline. Then I remember with my dice rolls, I'll probably see him once in a tournament. Though that said, the hits don't have to deal damage. Important. So if you're doing like incapacitates or other mind controls, Jason Wingard, how you doing? He's pretty easy to get out in situations like that. Or if you have like bystanders who can make significantly solid attacks, that'll help get him out. Also, like Tom said, for 40 points, not a bad bargain. So overall, I think if this is the state of these chases, oh boy, am I already in love.
Yeah. And they may actually be playable for something other than free on your sideline, which is cool, because that's the only time we ever saw those triple alerts.
And to put my game designer
with one exception,
to put my game designer hat on, I do like how the Injustice stuff, it seems to be doing the counterplay to the Justice League stuff. So the Super Friends bad guys are doing the opposite of Trouble Alert, whereas the Injustice League, like we saw with Solomon Grundy, his thing does the opposite of what the Justice League one does. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. What do you think, Mike?
Want to add?
I'm super excited, having been born in the 70s and a child watching Super Friends and loving the Legion of Doom. And in fact, when I look at this sculpt, I can already hear Gorilla Grodd with his lisp. He had a lisp. He had a horrible lisp. It was fantastic. I can't wait for Black Manta. I'm so excited. We're gonna get them all. We're gonna get a Toy Master. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Captain Cold in animated form. And yeah, 100%. You're going to see this figure at 10 points all over the place. I want 2 because I want to have 1 on my sideline and 1 for 10 points on my ruler team. Like, what a great way to fill in already a keyword, like Tom said, that's just massively blown up with Chase Thor, Black Adam, Mojo, Proteus. Like, come on. Get a Surtur in there before he retires in like a couple of months. So mind blown by this figure. If any of the other chases are anywhere as good as this, damn it, I'll be, oh man, I don't usually buy that much DC. Damn you to hell.
And my big hope is that we see even close to as many chases as we saw in Batman Animated, so that they just fill bricks with these things.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at it just alone, just that whole free action thing, right? Like, you critically hit somebody. Oh, I'll bring Grodd in now. Okay, let's do some passive damage to people, or let's give some tokens to a bunch of people for a guy who doesn't die. That's what's even crazier, because at least the trouble alerts, like in a practice game yesterday, we had a trouble alert come in, and I ended up losing those points. It was the Flash who came in. I rolled the 6 like 2 turns in a row or whatever, and that was it for the Flash. So here's like 40 points for you. Here's a guy who comes out 10 points, does some nasty stuff. Oh wait, you don't even get to kill him. He just goes back to my sideline.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll come back next turn.
Yeah,
Mind
they
blown.
also didn't make him unique, did they?
No, they didn't.
They don't make these guys unique.
No, that's what I'm saying, man. Get like 2, 3, 4 of these things. Just
Yeah.
filling in Gorilla Grods on your ruler team to turn your ruler team into a +7, a +8. Between him and Proteus's, who are also 10 points in ruler. Madness. Madness, I tell
You'd think they're trying to sell packs or something, guys.
you. Yeah, right? Crazy stuff.
All right, Mike, or you just did. No.
Oh yeah, it's Mike. Mike's up
It's
for
Mike.
up for Superman.
Oh, damn it, Superman. Glorified Boy Scout. Anyway, Batman will always be my favorite. So we've got Superman. Looks like he's the common number 11001.10.
Yeah, this is card 10 of the number 1 Superman. Oh boy.
Yeah. So that already puts the fear in me that there's that many of these. But so this is one of the team up cards that we're seeing for this Superman. So we know everything but the team up trait will be the same across the board of all the Superman. All the powers will be the same. So it's just going to be the team up trait that'll be different. So I'm going to get to the team up trait last in this particular case. So
Makes sense.
Justice League Unlimited, just like with the one we've seen before, at the beginning of your turn, roll a d6, remove an action token from another friendly character with the Justice League keyword that's 100 points or less. Always love that trait because it's not restricted to being anywhere near the character. They're anywhere on the map, so that's fun. He's also got another trait. I once thought I could protect the world by myself, but I was wrong. Once per game, when another friendly character rolls for the Justice League Unlimited trait, you may change the result to a 6. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I mean, it's once per game, so it's not, thank God, it's not totally overpowered. But that's super helpful, obviously, to give you a chance to take that token off of somebody and do something good. Straight up powers, charge, super strength, the regular defensive stuff. He's a pretty simple Superman, right? Runs in, smashes things, he's tough. The team up trait, though, is a cool one. It's a themed team up. Themed team up. That's sort of hard to say.
Kryptonian, fast.
Right? So unlike some of the other ones we'd seen in the previews, which were for individual characters, this is actually for a keyword and building a keyworded team. So if Superman is part of the listed themed team, which is Kryptonian, he can use leadership. When he does and removes an action token from a character with the listed keyword, heal that character 1 click. And then in parentheses, after revealing forces, you may replace a game element's default card with an alternate card. You can't choose the team up card if any characters on your starting force share a name. So at least you can't exploit it by, loading up multiple Supermans on a Kryptonian theme team and somehow, everybody's healing each other and taking tokens off and whatever. So that's nice. It's nice that they've at least put that in there. And from what I've seen and what we will see, it looks like that is a commonality that they've done. So across the board, you can only have one named character using a team up card. It doesn't mean, though, that your whole team couldn't technically have team up cards. They just can't any of them have the same name. So right. in essence, you're going to Highlander your team to be able to get one of these team up things. Yeah. Which I like. I've always been a fan of Highlander. I would love it to get back to that, something we've talked about on the show as well. I think he's a neat Superman. Obviously, also he's at 100 points, so you can fill him into a pretty easy 300-point Justice League team, super helpful, or a Kryptonian team, though I guess we'll have to wait and see how much Kryptonian we have coming up in this set, as my understanding is most Kryptonian really is in the retired state right now. I'm pretty sure. I feel like we haven't seen much in a long time.
A lot of Krypton got
Yeah. So I think you'll probably want to look at playing him if you pull him in sealed. Again, depending on what else comes out. He's not bad, but meta, again, I have to wait and see what other Kryptonian and whatever stuff comes up in this set. And that trait of taking the token off for Justice League Unlimited is not bad. He just feels that usual soft thing that you get from a beat stick. He has no way of stopping you from outwitting him. You tag him for, 7, and he's dead. So not super easy to kill, but I don't think I would want to invest my 100 points in him competitively.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Kryptonian Modern right now, and it's not looking good.
Yeah.
It's a lot of Superman, a lot of Supergirl, Mr. Oz, and then like all that stuff from 15th anniversary. My hopes weren't particularly high for common number 1, but like you were saying, a fun Kryptonian theme team is going to get a kick out of this guy because Kryptonians are generally tough guys, so they could use a heal on a leadership role for sure. And Superman team ability doesn't make him useless, especially in the world of Wild, where we have some wild cards out there. We just got a whole bunch in Captain America. And the Justice League team ability is not what we used to like. So
don't forget that +1 movement.
But I do have to say that that trait, I thought I could protect it, the one that lets you get the free 6 roll on a Justice League Unlimited trait. There have been 1,000 situations where it's like, if I can get this leadership role, I win the game. And if I have that in my pocket, I can do that.
I mean, I will say this, that Hawkman Hawkgirl is 100 points, and you can play Zatanna at 50 points. So that's only a 250-point Justice League team, which, that Hawkman Hawkgirl getting tokens removed could be pretty sick.
Yeah.
So there's some stuff there.
Anything you want to add there, Tom?
Yeah, I think you guys have gone into the wrong line of work. You obviously both should be representatives for a charity, given how charitable you're being towards this figure.
I'm sorry. We have to meet our expectation on common number 001. Yes, this is a trash Superman.
He's not good. This is 100 points of not a good figure. He's good enough that if you don't pull anything better in sealed and you're not that interested in winning and you feel like staying for the tournament anyway, then you might put him onto your team just to have a laugh. He's good enough that maybe in a battle royal, if it's the 4th round, you might leave another 15-point figure in the box. But I don't. Yeah, you might. He's not good, unfortunately. I love the Kryptonian team up idea because it really it feels themey. It makes it real. Like, it's cool that he's a leader for other Kryptonians and he helps heal them up and yada yada. But I'll never play him. So what am I really talking about? He's not good. Let's see if we do any better with his arch nemesis, who I will guide you through.
Thank you, Tom.
His name is Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is an uncommon, and he has also double team abilities. The complementary opposite to Superman. He's got the Superman enemy team ability and the Injustice League team ability. Now, Superman enemy is a rarely seen team ability, but it is the one where when you've got 2 people with the team ability next to each other, then the one with higher points can basically take a free action to use Outwit. Which is cool. It's a source of Outwit on his top dial, which he does not otherwise have. He does have Outwit on his dial, but he gives access to it in addition to enhancement off the top. I'm getting ahead of myself. He is 50 points. He costs, he has range of 6. He does have some decent keywords, including the Injustice League, Metropolis, Project Cadmus, very useful keyword, that one. But we're getting to better ones now.
We're looking at 100% of the figures with it right now.
Yes, exactly. So you could play 6 Lex Luthors on a Project Cadmus theme team if you don't appreciate victory. And politician is an okay keyword, but scientist is a solid one. So definitely good for that. I like Mike. We'll get to his team up trait last. His is actually quite good, I think. But first of all, he's got the Injustice League trait that we mentioned earlier, which I think is a wonderful trait. It's at the beginning of your turn, roll a d6, and on a result of 6, give an action token to an opposing character that's 100 points or less. So it's just, I love that idea. That's such a great power, and it's not limited by keyword in the way that obviously the Justice League one is. So I think that's very neat. He's got an attack power. I might as well talk about his dial now because he's got this attack power for his entire dial. He starts out with some running shot and a 7 movement and shifts to sidestep for the back 3 clicks. He's got a nice solid 18 ESD off the top, making him fairly hard to shoot, though a little squishy up close. Back dial willpower, and he alternates between enhancement and outwit on the damage dial. So theoretically, you can land him where you need to. Because he doesn't have willpower, then if you're pushing him off the top, then he's definitely going to land on that outwit, and he's probably going to die shortly thereafter. The attack power, though, is free. Choose one. Penetrating Psychic Blast, Precision Strike, Range Combat Expert, or Improved Targeting, Ignores Hindering, or Pulse Wet. Oh, no, he doesn't have that one. All right, well, he's still okay. Penetrating Psychic Blast, Precision Strike, Range Combat Expert, and Ignores Hindering for targeting, and he can choose the chosen power or ability this turn. So he can't stack them together, but it gives him some nice versatility on his attack dial. However, I've made a couple of passing jabs at the fact that he's not very stalwart and is not likely to last through too many attacks. If you want to do something about that, then team up with Solomon Grundy. His team up Solomon Grundy effect is if the listed keyword is on the map, Lex Luthor can use invulnerability, and then the usual shtick about how team up powers work. So that is a big improvement. It's outwittable, it's penetratable, but all the same, it goes a long way to give him invulnerability in addition to the powers that he's already got. And he's not necessarily that easy to outwit if he outwits you first, if he's got it through the Superman team, or he pushes onto it himself. Otherwise, he gives better than he can take it. With Solomon on the map, then that sort of balances it out a little bit. Otherwise, what you see is what you get, and he's okay. What do you think, Mike?
I just find it funny that you made the joke about playing multiple Luthors, but actually playing 2 Lex Luthors together is not a bad idea. Because if you put the 2 of them together, what they're giving outwit with the attack power that they both have.
Can I pause you for a second? The new wording on the Superman enemy free if this character is adjacent to a friendly character of lower points that can use his team ability. It can use outwit until your next turn. So
too bad. Because that would have been because the coolest part is the attack power. So one of them could have had ignores hindering to outwit something on somebody or outwit stealth on somebody, while the other one shoots with like Pensire precision strike. The enhancement would give 4 damage. So if only the Superman ally or enemy worked together, 2 Luthors would be great.
Yeah, and
it's totally 100 points.
That's a solid Project Cadmus theme. Playing with Silver Sable and Eternity.
Scientist.
Now,
just saying. Anyway, he's a cool little 50-point figure. I think that obviously the team up helps because, let's get some invulnerability on a guy who's already got the ESD. I think he's not bad at 50 points, especially because of the attack power. I'm excited to see what other team up cards he'll have, though. That's really kind of what this figure, to me, feels like he's got lots of potential with the way his dial's laid out. I'm excited to see what his other team-up cards are.
My entry on this looks like a neat sealed include, but what are the Vegas odds of getting the right team-up card and the right character to team up with? I don't know how team-ups are being packed in the cards. Are we going to get a couple extra team-up cards with every character? I have no idea how this is going to work yet. So until I know that information, I can't call but if I look at this dial, and since that special power is going to be consistent across all versions of Lex Luthor, this is an all-right 50-point uncommon character for sealed. This is an all-right dude that might fit into your scientist team depending on what you're looking at as far as that's concerned. I don't know what Project Cadmus looks like in the set because that's more likely where we're going to see it, but I think at best we're going to see Amanda Waller and maybe a couple weird things based on the cartoon and my knowledge of it, but it's not going to be an overwhelming keyword, so let's get that out of our heads. Again, that Injustice League trait is going to, at some point, just shift the dimension of a turn one day, or in one case. And when I see that, gameplay wise, I'm going to think about that and think about how ruined my turn is if one extra character gets 1 extra action token. So be aware of that. Aside from that, the Injustice League team build is probably going to be the one that does the most work for him if you're rolling those dice well enough.
I gotta say, I do like RCE on an opening 11-3. That's nice. That's one of the times where I'm actually be tempted to put it all into damage.
Yep. That's about it, right? Yep.
That's it
So
for previews.
that's it for previews. So thank you guys once again over at 2 Clicks from KO.
Yeah, man.
It's always awesome to see more people getting more previews, and looking forward to the rest of preview season. This set's looking like a lot of fun for Sealed so far, and Gorilla Grodd looks amazing. So it's already got our first touch into what we're going to see in the competitive game, I think.
I agree.
But Tom, in our WhatsApp chat, you started musing about something that me and Mike maybe dabbled in a little bit last week, but didn't go full bore into. I don't want to let you introduce the topic, so I can shut up.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm not sure what was talked about last week, as I missed the show. But the thing that I wanted to bring up, and mostly just because it's been on my mind, and until these previews hit today, there wasn't necessarily a lot to talk about tonight's show. So I thought maybe now would be a good opportunity for a little brainstorming and pontificating, because right now our state of the game is. Obviously, we have the modern meta, which we know what it is, and there is there was a pauper tournament style that was making the rounds, a few months back, and it was for better or for worse. And I was kind of in my mind casting back to the days when limited was a more common thing, and remembering how much I enjoyed limited as an alternative to the standard modern age build. For those unaware or those who weren't playing, because it actually has been a little while, limited. A little context is perhaps required, but I'll give you the basics and then I'll tell you the bit of the context. What limited was it was a version of building, and you guys can correct me if I miss anything, in which you were not permitted to play resources, you were not permitted to do equips, which was basically possessors. I mean, I guess equip. Not that's actually not true of the equip specific, because you could use special objects, but you couldn't use possessors, and I believe you couldn't use ID cards because I think limited still overlapped a little bit with the ID card age.
Yes.
And you couldn't have any figures that were larger than a peanut base. And so those were the basic rules as I remember them. I don't think I missed anything there. But the idea of it, then the context I was going to talk about was the fact that this was very much popular in the heyday of resources being everywhere. Like there was a period where the resource meta was just out to lunch. It was everything from the Bat Belt through the Book of the Skulls and the Phoenix Force and all like 8 or whatever lantern batteries there were. 9 lantern batteries, and towards the very end of it, we may have even gotten a little bit of overlap into the whatchamacallit.
Phoenix Force.
I mentioned Phoenix Force, I thought,
Okay,
but
sorry,
I
my
mean the
Quinjet.
Eternity, Quinjet. No, I don't think we ever had that overlap with the Bat Belt. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Anyway.
Rock of Eternity and Pandora's Box were the other.
Oh right, those. Yeah.
Anyway, the point is there have been a lot of resources, and at one point in the game, there were a ton of them that were all active at the same time. And because so many of the batteries, and also because possessors were so big into the game, especially in conjunction with the batteries, then so much of what you were doing with your team and on the map at that point was constructed of the things that you were equipping your characters to, and then the resources that they were being associated to, and we were just starting to see the launch of Colossal Retaliation. Was just kind of hitting towards the tail end of the big resource period with the Superman Wonder Woman set that hit. So there was some overlap there, and the not having bigger than peanut bases was partly to get around stuff like that, or that we still had some 6x3s that were legal at that time as well that were restricted in that way. And the point was ultimately it wasn't to just say figures on the map. It wasn't so straightforward as that. It wasn't so simple as that. But it was a format that encouraged you to think outside the box. At the time, special objects were really not played very often. What few there weren't a ton of them out there. And by and large, they just weren't as efficient as resources. Like resources were just better use of points than any special object at the time. And so the fact that they were still legal in this format, and the fact that otherwise you more had to make do with what you could do with just the figures on your team without a lot of the extra peripherals and other stuff to fill in the gaps or to give them other attack options. It was a fun alternative game style that was not super limiting and super cramped, but it did create a very different feel in the game. So the reason I bring it up is that model would not work very well in the current state of the game. Resources are gone. Possessors are gone. ID cards are very much still around, and colossal or quad or larger than peanut bases are very much still around. But I think that if all you did was take away the large figures and the ID cards, you would have a different sort of feeling game. But all it would feel like is a game with less, at least in my opinion. And what I was sort of pontificating on was, I guess I'm pontificating now. What I was reflecting on was the fact that if we wanted to create a modern version, and when I said, sorry, not modern as in HeroClix terminology, but like a contemporary version of what a limited setup would be, I was wondering what it would look like. And so, if you'd like, I can introduce what I was thinking of, and we can just sort of roundtable it a little bit, what we like or what we don't like about, or different ideas that we have. Whatever you like, really. I can tell you the first thing that comes to my mind is that limited as it was, I like the idea of limited being placing limits on things as opposed to placing restrictions. And that's kind of where my mind went to first, and then sort of started riffing off of that. So the old version of limited locked down stuff. It says you could not have any resources, and that makes sense because by and large you could only ever use one resource on a team anyway. In fact, I think that was actually part of the resource rules. And also it said you could only have you couldn't have any possessors, and that's fair. I mean, for the most part, some teams were rocking 3 or 4 possessors. I guess more than 3 was comparatively rare, but it was very common to have 1 or 2. And so having none and having no ID cards, I like the idea, but I think that it's a bit limiting to just cut it off in that way. What I thought a contemporary version of Limited could look like is one where you basically could not have more than one of a number of different additional game elements. So things like ID cards, figures larger than a peanut base, special objects, special terrain, perhaps colossal retaliators if you wanted to go to that point. And I would even say figures. I mean, I like the Highlander as they've defined it for the new set is based on names. I've always kind of liked it based on figures, but I kind of thought that if you can only have one of any given piece, as well as only one ID card, only one special terrain, only one map bonus, only one special object, basically all the stuff of the game you can only have one of, except figures, of course. Then I thought that would scratch an interesting itch. It would prevent the sort of the massive stacking that can sometimes happen with tons of objects or tons of the same character or that sort of thing, but still not take that stuff out of the game altogether, so there's still some richness in the setup idea. So I mean, that was just the first thing that came to my mind is if we want to place limits, then don't place restrictions. Don't say what we can't have, but say that we cannot have more than a very basic amount, and hopefully force a certain enrichment of the types of things that you're filling your teams with. I mean, that was the first thing that came to my mind. What do you think?
Funnily enough, you could call that Highlander because of the fact that you're basically saying there can be only one. Right?
Interesting.
It's
almost literally Highlander, right?
It's literally Highlander. I like it the best. I think it's a great idea. I would extend it. Yeah, I would extend it to everything. I would say literally. Like, obviously, it's not you can only have one of a single base figure, but you can have only one of each actual figure, set number, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You could only have 001 figure and blah, 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 blah. Like, you could have 5 Wolverines, but they can't be 5
Correct.
Wolverines from Regenesis. They could be from 5 different sets or something like that. You could still do the Council of Namors.
Yeah.
You can't have all from the same set. I like the idea. I think it's great because I think one of the things, and you touch on it, whenever you restrict something, especially in a game where a collectible game, where we have spent money, we've acquired things that have been difficult to get. We've all at some point in time or another have spent money on a little plastic figure that really should have cost us $2 and maybe not $20 or $200. So you don't want to tell people you can't use the stuff that you've acquired, but to limit it and not make things so crazy, because we've also all made the comment before about how sometimes the game feels really, really cluttered. Like, there's so much stuff on the map. There's so much stuff beside the map. There's so much stuff you have to bring with you. I mean, players of other games who are gaming shops always make comments about HeroClix, about the amount of stuff you have to play the game, and all these things you're bringing. So it's not a bad idea to streamline that a bit by saying, one multi-base figure, or one special object, or one whatever. I like the concept. I think it's a better way of going about getting to a place of limited without it feeling like you were saying, like you're being penalized.
Jason?
Excuse me. I think one big thing I want to point out about this is how difficult it is to make a restricted format that seems like it makes sense. It's not to say, like, hey, you guys are having a bad idea. I'm saying I think that's more reflective on how cool it is that this is good. The game is in a healthier place than we'd like to admit. And, if trying to make a more restrictive format that allows other figures to shine, I think that's really cool. That said, I always like to try to keep it as simple as possible, to as minimalistic words as possible, but the way we're going about this is pretty simple. You're allowed one multi-base figure beyond P8 base. Makes sense. You're allowed... I mean, I'd almost go as far as to say one Colossal Retaliation on a character in your entire thing, just because you know me, and I'm going to find a way to get around that. I got around the Highlander rule for Popper, so...
Well, there's tons, there's tons of ways of, first of all, there's obviously tons of ways to do it if you break theme, but even within theme, there's tons of ways to have many retaliators if you want to do it that way.
Well, sure, because we've also got Atlas. Atlas is a great example. He has Colossal Retaliation, but he's not a multi-base figure.
I actually think his is even called Giant Retaliation, which is weird.
Or Ronin. Ronin has the effect like that too.
I'm not what I guess what I'm saying is I feel like when people say multi-base, I don't think at the current state of the game right now, especially if you keep it to modern, I don't think it's them being multi-base is the problematic format at this point.
Right.
I think there's something else underlying into what is multi-base. But again, in the interest of simplicity, limiting multi-bases makes it easier to describe, right? One ID card, easy to say, right? Whereas, if I say no more than one character with Colossal Retaliation, well, what if they don't have it until later on the dial? Shut up. Becomes the argument, right? It's So I think the way that you've laid it out, and I've always been like, I'm repeating myself when I say it. I've always been about keep it simple when describing the format. Popper was simple enough. Commons and uncommons only, and it's like strict commons and uncommons only. And it was right down to like there was the inclusion WWE. I was cool with it after the fact because you know what, I like those guys anyway. But all things considered, I like what you presented. My big thing though is I one of the things that Popper does well that I'm not sure this format's necessarily going to do as well is taking figures we don't normally play with and making them better. And that is one thing I noticed in Limited. Now, sometimes in Limited, it would go in reverse where it's like, oh, this figure really excelled in Limited. We're getting back into a time where we're able to start using these things, everything with it again. And then that figure would excel. But other figures would excel in the Limited format and not necessarily perform as well outside of it. I think Maximus was one that really stood out to me. Is in Limited formats, he was bringing out those alpha...
Primitives.
Thank you. And people were using the crap out of him, and he was on like a lot of non-themed Limited teams. Banshee, to a lesser extent, Banshee did end up winning Rock Worlds that year as well. But Banshee showed up in that format like just massively. So I think what and I don't have the strict answer on this because I haven't put enough thought into this because using my voice hurts enough right now, and trying to getting back into the swing of life right now is. But I feel like that's kind of where Popper excels. Is like I haven't used X figure, bring it into the game, and I think that's what makes it so good for this. But that's what I would like to see out of the format. If we want to keep to doing what Limited did and say my whole collection is good, I want to I want to see a way that things that I wouldn't normally be using might actually find their way into the game.
Now, like the next question that segues off of this is less about like, what do you think of this pitch, and
Yeah.
more generally speaking, like, what do we think? Do we think that the game particularly would benefit from another supported format at this point, besides Popper, and you could consider Rock Age? I mean, Rock Age is something that I've almost never touched personally because, frankly, it's too daunting. Um, but it is still a thing that is just still called Rock Age now, or they call it the Majestics. Uh,
I know Majestics calls their thing the Bronze Age because they got rid of the Rock Age.
Okay, so that is what I'm describing anyway. I can't
Yeah.
exactly. I've heard them say it a million times, and somehow I'm brain farting on it. But anyway, there's like the Majestic's Open Series format, whatever you want to call that. And then of course there's been Popper, and then there's Modern. Like, is that enough? Do we really need anything else? Is it beneficial, or is it just muddying the game that doesn't necessarily have enough competitive high level tournament play in whole to support a bunch of other disparate formats?
I kind of want to address this question. Answer your question with another question: is what do we consider enough of a supported format? Who's got to be supporting it in that manner, right? Where Rock supports Popper, and to a lesser extent, WizKid supports The Rock, or to a different extent, the WizKid supports The Rock. The
Yeah.
Majestics is kind of rolling on its own. So do we consider these necessarily supported formats, or are we only looking at what WizKids is? I think personally the idea that these formats are out there and being played is cool. I'm not 100% on calling them supported fully. I would but that said,
Maybe widespread is a better word than
Yeah.
supported. Then
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that they are widespread enough. At least Popper and Modern are widespread enough that they've had quite a presence in almost any major hero market in the last year. Like, does something else need to be injected or not, or is that just muddying it?
and then we go back to the mother of all games, as we like to go and say, Magic. They haven't stopped creating formats. And just to list off the top of my head: Legacy, Vintage, Popper, Modern, which is not what you think it is. Pioneer, recently created. Standard, Draft, Sealed. Like they've got things coming out of holes I didn't even know. People are also creating and supporting formats. They have the Commander, which is a casual format. That's being supported by them. That's the mother. But then
Is it good? Like, I mean, I know it's not always a fair comparison because Magic is so big, but is it good? Like, for Magic?
I think it's perfectly healthy for Magic. I personally, what I like about it is when they extend the life of my cards in Magic specifically, and I would love WizKids to extend the life of my HeroClix, and they don't have to go full Golden Age. I understand there might be some hiccups with that, but find a starting point and just be like, all right, here's our cutoff for this new format. And I would love WizKids to support that, just for the longevity of things, or just for the full use of my collection. And I would like Majestic's Bronze Age is a good example of creating something that increases the age of my figures, and extending the use of them for a long time. Because The Rock is kind of on WizKids' playbook, they're mostly supporting Modern, and that mentality comes from new sets sell new figures, and WizKids does print at a limited amount. So, anyway, I'm business and game design kind of catching up with me.
Well, so what do you think, Mike? I mean,
Yeah,
we should
let Mike
talk to you,
chime
right?
in because
Oh my God, you said so many things and so many different topics now. So, yeah, I don't even know what to answer at this point in time, to be fair.
I guess we're kind of riffing off the idea of how healthy or unhealthy is it to have more widespread game formats.
I have so many mixed feelings about it because I feel like some of the desire to investigate this isn't necessarily about do we need more formats as much as it's do we need to clean up how we're playing the game, or do we need to clean up existing format, or you know what I mean? Because I feel like that's more often what my personal issues end up being, and some issues of our play group ends up being, is like we've said, and like I said even in this podcast, that it feels cluttered at times. It feels sometimes when we're playing this game, it's like there's just so much stuff here, and it's like just too cluttered. And so are we trying to make it less cluttered? So in trying to make it less cluttered, is that about having another format, or is that about changes in WizKids going forward and game design and that kind of stuff? So I think that's one aspect of it, is that question. And then the other part being, okay, well, let's say it is about creating more formats because we do want to have more stuff. Do we need to? Yeah, why not? I think Jason touched on it the best in saying you want to be able to be looking at your stuff and playing all your different stuff, being encouraged to play your different stuff. I think different formats do that. I think you can't I think you can't help but play a lot of similar things in the current 300 modern. You know what I'm saying? Like there's an overall build thing that's going on. We've talked about it numerous times. It's almost like you build a 275 point team every time because you're saving 25 points for IDs in objects, or IDs in train.
I don't know about you. I built a 292 point team.
Yeah. Anyway, yes, because you need to have your tank. So, but you know what I'm saying. But this is an example of it where you get in a rut where every time you're building, you're not building 300 modern. You're actually building 275 modern because you're always putting this on. You're always putting this on. It's like I wear the same coat every day that I go outside. I might wear a different shirt and a different set of pants and a different whatever, but I'm putting that same big coat on every day and it looks the same. Like, I think that's when the staleness comes in, and that's when the worry comes in, and that's when we start to look at, do we need more formats? Do we need to branch out this game? Do we need to make more ways to play it to make it interesting? And I don't disagree with that. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad idea. Why not? If other things like Magic and stuff can do it, sure, of course. Like, I mean, I want to delve back into my collection. Every single time I could build a team and have that team be competitive, and it's stuff that other people aren't playing, and it's stuff I haven't played in a while, I am probably in the happiest mindset in that moment. You know what I'm saying? Like that my Spider-Woman team, I love that team just because Spider-Woman's on. Who the hell is playing super rare prime Spider-Woman? Like, you know, that kind of, those little things bring me more joy. So the more of my collection I can play, the more opportunities to play differently, to look at the game differently, to not always be like, okay, I'm going to build a team around a call-in battery person who's hard to kill. How many points are they? So how many different good call-ins can I call in with them at those points? Like, you know what I mean? That feels a little stale. So yeah, I want to be given more opportunities to look at the game and build differently.
Mm-hmm. One last thing to kind of approach the topic is what I would like to see is how many players do we lose at rotation? That's what I would love to know. If we lose a bunch of players in competitive play at rotation, or not even just competitive play, but even at a local level, how many players sort of disappear when their collection goes from modern to not modern anymore, and they realize that, you know, the second the store runs a modern tournament, they just can't play. I would like to know that metric, just so that we can turn to somebody and say, this is what we need to do. You know what I mean?
Do you think that we've got, like, obviously not public source, but do you think WizKids has enough information in the Win and or the Rock has enough information in their points tracking systems to be able to make a meaningful metric of that? I would say they probably do, right?
I feel like they do. I just don't know how deep they can go with it and what metrics they're also able to track. Because it's one thing to be like, okay, this store dropped at Modern and then jumped up again when we hit the pre-release and the release sealed. You know, that would be a correlatable data, right? It's just knowing how to use that data is really the trick. They need somebody who does that.
Right. And, well, or it's not that, I mean, easy for me to say, but I work in an industry where it's not uncommon for us to go to outside data analysis businesses and warehouses to be able to look at things. I think they've probably got enough metrics, especially considering that they've got gameplay metrics down to the individual user level.
Yeah.
So it's easy for them to figure out who's got a very low number, whatever, an arbitrarily low number of plays are concerned. Essentially sweep that data aside, and then further partition out your data into clusters about sort of people who play no matter what, and then people who have intermittent play periods, people who have temporary large play periods, etc. And use that to kind of gain some, like you said, you can do it based on retirement. You could do it based on any number of other metrics as well, right? You compare it to the release of sets or the frequency or infrequency of large scale tournaments. I mean, who kind of burns their way out on their way to Worlds and then kind of doesn't do anything again for the next 9 months, and just. Yeah, kind of, right? It's a bit, and I'm kind of in that category too, to some extent. So I think that there's a number of interesting little pieces of data mining that they probably have access to doing, and it would be interesting. I mean, it would be interesting for us to know, and I doubt it will ever be ours to know unless they have something they particularly want to trumpet. But I would like to hope or think that they're doing that analysis at some level and helping use that to sort of see how their game is growing and evolving and what choices are resonating. It's a good point.
All right. Yeah, we went to data analysis. We've gone deep, guys.
See, I was about to say there's a lot of variable factors there, though.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you have to think about economy of the area. You have to think about what's going on with people. You have to think about the age of the players and what things can happen in their life that change, that pull them out of the game, that are completely unrelated to the product. Like, I think that's a pretty difficult. That's a tough.
It
one.
Is, but that's what statistics are, right? Like when you're we tried to do sort of socio-economic, situational metrics.
So many variables.
It really is. I mean, you have to figure out what are your small wins, or what are the big enough spikes that it can't be just nothing but individual differentiation. It's very easy for correlation and causation to be intertwined, whether rightfully or not. But there's still, I think, there's at least some basic key learnings that you can usually get from enough data, and it's been great. The win has been, as much as we like to make fun of it at every single tournament ever, the win has done well enough.
Break the win.
It's done well enough for long enough that I'll bet that they've got a nice database there.
Sure, I think though that they would have to use that in correlation with a survey.
Oh, for sure. I don't think they could do it themselves.
No. They would have to drop a survey of active players and people, whatever, and even contact people who maybe dropped off and stopped playing and stuff, and actually ask them those questions to be able to correlate that data properly. Absolutely, because of the amount of variables that are there. But I agree with you that it's something they should 100% be doing if they feel that it's necessary, though. If their overall business model, if their overall business is increasing, you know what I'm saying? If they're selling more product every year or whatever, it really probably doesn't matter so much to them about the effect on competitive scene and competitive players, as long as there's a steady increase, or at least they're maintaining the existing profit margins, right?
Yeah.
All right, so now that we've gone and done that, this is what happens when guys in their near 40s, late 30s, and early 40s are just like, let's talk about what we can do with HeroClix.
It's a slow news week, right? Like it's nice to just chat a little bit about HeroClix.
I also want to say thank you, Jason, for putting me in my early 40s, as I will be 48 in a week.
That's
if you didn't say that, nobody would have known any better.
I don't think I'm allowed to say my early 40s anymore.
But
I may act like a 12-year-old.
41.
It's an elastic term.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of aging and weird voices, I don't know where I'm going with that, but I want to thank our patrons over at patreon.com/HeroClix for supporting us as we move into questions.
Wow.
Speaking of aging and weird voices,
guys who are aging and have weird voices. Your support,
Jason's one-step program on how to alienate the viewer.
I was referring to me being the ones being supported. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Oh my god.
But yeah, that said, thank you guys over at patreon.com/marriedwithclicks. This Friday will be our patron hangout. If you want to be a part of that, check us out at patreon.com/marriedwithclicks. With that, it's time to open up to questions. If you're watching us live in the chat, put capital letters question in front of your question so we can catch it in the chat. And Kenji has been caught off guard by your age. He's in the chat live right now. All right, so Michael Fedor has a sea of questions for us on Facebook. We're going to start with the first one. I want to come up with a okay. By the way, Michael Fedor is the alpha patron, the one who's been there since the beginning.
He's aging and has a weird voice, according to Jason.
No, I said
you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
God, you guys are really good at misreading what I say. God, and now you're making me yell while I have a bad voice. You're all. Why do I even let you guys on? Where's Jay? I need somebody to insult. Okay, I want to come up with a reverse Jason team. God damn it. Every time I hear people talk about Jason Wingard, stop referring to him as his first name.
Oh, I thought you meant a reverse Jason College team. I was like, wouldn't that just be a one-man army?
What's the difference?
I thought it was going to be a successful team.
Ooh, savagery. You know...
You're on the wrong podcast for shots fired, my friend.
Exactly. I've got Siren, Banshee, Black Canary. Yeah. Who else has Sonic Scream? There has to be more. I think we're going at Pulse Waving, guys. Jeez, reverse Jason teams. I don't know what we're talking
couldn't
about.
you just do a lot of Battle Fury?
Yeah, there you go. Just people who can't be mind controlled.
It depends on what element of Jason we're talking about. If we're talking about the Pog generator, I'm sure that's why he's looking at pulse waivers, right?
Exactly. I think that's such a small part. I don't think you should focus on that.
Well, I think it's a big part, but I mean, I would just do maybe Nightbringer. Is that what his name is? Whenever Jason creates a Pog, you make a better one. Isn't that Nightbringer?
Dawnbreaker.
Dawnbreaker, sorry, yeah. Dawnbreaker and a bunch of Battle Fury.
Or it might have been Dawnbringer. We might be both like halfway there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just some stealthy people to avoid being mind controlled. Maybe one pulse waiver when they call out some stuff, and a little Dawnbreaker to get some Pogs herself, or Machine Smith.
I don't want to jump too high down the chase ladder because Michael Fedor does tend to work on a budget.
Yeah, fair enough.
But
That's
yes,
fair.
If you have a Breaker, hold on, it is.
Isn't Dawnbreaker a sword in Skyrim?
Dawnbreaker. It is Dawnbreaker.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, the metal Green Lantern.
All right.
Metal Green Lantern.
Yeah! Why did I do that? Oh, that hurt. There was somebody else who made +1. No, that was Jason Wingard. Never mind. I was like,
you can always go with Grey Ghost.
Yeah, Grey Ghost.
Grey Ghost. Tom's just trying to beat that dead horse until it's a Grey Ghost.
God. All right. But yeah, so you got to kind of focus on both realms of it. And I think
I'm trying to think. Does anyone cut off free actions at this point? I don't think so. We're well past that point.
Not without a distance, I don't think. I think there's one character's like adjacent characters can't do it or something like that. Or Billy Batson. Like you have to be within 4 squares.
Yeah. I do think that Dawn Riser is probably a good place to start. But again, you're right. It is a chase. Other than that, frankly, unfortunately, for better or for worse, one great way to counter Jason is with Jason. If your opponent's filling the board with pieces and you're just mind controlling your way through all of them, then that's a pretty good counter too. So sorry to say it, but he's one of those guys that's good against himself.
Yeah. And then he does go on to ask, excuse me, how soon should I get prepared with? Oh, sorry, Mike. Was there anything you want to add to the?
No, I would just also throw in real. I was just thinking in my head. What's her face? Peggy Carter, not the Ultra Chase, but the other Peggy Carter, because she has
fire to her,
right.
Can't be targeted.
You can't draw lines of fire to her, and she has outwit, and I'm pretty sure she also has espionage. So just move her up the map into position so she can see Jason Wingard and outwit mind control.
Fair.
Yeah. I mean, the WWE guys are pretty good for that, too.
Yep.
All right. He does want to know, how soon should I get prepared with practicing a team for... Oh, he says Worlds in June. June is U.S. Nationals.
Yeah.
Should I try out a number of teams in the months leading up to it? It's never too early to start. Just do keep your eye on new sets that come out is my advice, because sometimes you could come across a team that is good and then something just adds to it, and then you're not really behind, you're just keeping up with it. So it's never it really Mike, like Mike said, he was practicing this week, so it's never too soon to start practicing. I don't think, Mike, since you've been practicing this week, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you really nailed it on the head there too. Is definitely you practice now because you want to give yourself not only time to get comfortable with the figures, but to sort of figure out a flow of things. You may 5 different practices in, you might find out that it works really great against this, but doesn't work really great against this, and you want to try something different. And then a new set comes out, Justice League Unlimited's coming. Do we get Fantastic Four before US Nats? I don't think we do.
I don't know the actual release on that one.
Because I know we get the starter in March, so that will be legal.
Is it this month?
Oh,
yeah.
I get Doctor Doom this month. My first taste of Doctor Doom this month.
Wow.
So you've got at least Justice League Unlimited, and you've got the stuff from that starter set that's going to come along. So like Jason said, it's you start practicing now to figure out the different things that are working for you, but with a sort of an open door policy of the new stuff that's coming down the line. I think if you want to look at it the other way, I think if you've reached a month before the event and you haven't practiced anything, you should definitely start to practice at that point in time, because there's still a good chance you're going to change your mind at the last minute, the night before, and completely change your team in the hotel room. That might have happened once or 8 times over my HeroClix career.
You probably shouldn't have.
I distinctly remember an argument in a room where we believe somebody died in about Mike's teams.
That's it. It happens. But at least I was practiced with some figures before then. So this is part of why you want to get the practice in. And also, too, life gets busy. You never know what might come up. Something might get in the way. And it's not just about your team that you're practicing, right? It's the stuff you're playing against. So the more games you play, the more other figures you're also going to get to practice against, the more you're going to learn how those figures work. And that can only translate into better performance as well.
All right. And his last question in regards to local play. Is it fair sportsmanship to announce to the regular weekly local... Oh, sorry, Tom, I totally blasted out. Did you want to add to the long-term practice thing? Or?
No, I mean, all I could really say is, to some extent, I think it's kind of a given that it's never too early to start practicing. So I guess the only thing that I can add, and you guys both kind of said it, I would just draw a highlighter mark across it, is that at this point, I think practicing should be considered trying to figure out the types of deployments and the types of figures and the types of teams that are of interest to you, as opposed to really trying to lock yourself into specific combinations or specific effects, because those are the things that can suddenly be short-circuited when a new piece or two hits the meta that completely changes the complexion. But certainly now is the time to start kind of getting a sense of whether you like mobility, you like don't die, you like swarm, you like one-man army, etc. Like what feels right with the meta as it is right now. Thinking it's probably going to be, you can reasonably be certain it's probably going to be about 65 or 70% the same when we get there.
Yep. All right. And the last question, as I was about to allude to, is more about the weekly tournament. And very specifically, is it good sportsmanship to announce to the regular weekly local tournament group that you're planning on bringing the Unimind? I think that's actually probably one of the best sportsmanship things you can do. Because
not bringing it is also
yes,
good piece of sportsmanship.
But yes,
everybody, I'm bringing gas next week so that they know, okay, I got to be ready for some gas. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that idea. I wish that more, and I actually have said over the years, I wish there was almost like a DEF CON system for HeroClix, where you could say that today's event is, DEF CON 2 or DEF CON 5, like just to let people sort of know, hey, by the way, it might be 300 modern, but we're bringing the A game today. So you don't bring your fun little, oh, look at this animal team I made around Squirrel Girl and a whole bunch of tippy toes. And I think it's a very class act to at least give people the heads up that you want to bring something.
That's
good
what I thought I was doing when I brought Starfleet. They still won.
Yeah, right.
And at least when you bring that animal team, it's high DEF CON, you can go in and go like, I wasn't gonna win this. It's a DEF CON 5 game tournament, you know. So yeah, absolutely. If you do like say I want to play this figure, and you know it's a figure that is very highly played in competitive play, it's perfectly fine and acceptable to turn to your play group and say, hey, look, guys, I'm gonna bring this character so they know next week that you're gonna bring that, and they can't really be mad, can they?
Right?
Well, everybody's allowed to play everything they have. I mean, it may suck sometimes, and you may want to steer people away from it, but everybody's allowed to. And I think it's always a good idea to give people a heads up. Hey, I really want to play this figure. I know it's powerful, but I want an opportunity to play it.
Yeah. It also the other thing that we're not saying here is that if that encourages anybody to want to try to counter build you, then great, because you want to try to face your counter builds and see if you can still get past them. Because ultimately, the best possible team you can have is the one that wins, even when it's being counter built.
All right, and he does have one final question on Facebook here. Are the Marvel's Infinity Warps line of comics worth turning into HeroClix? Now, I did have to look this up because I had no idea what he was talking about.
I do.
And
I totally do.
Mike, you're so tapped into comics. I knew you were going to know.
Of course.
Tom, are you familiar with what Infinity Warps are?
No.
Okay, do you remember? Okay, go ahead.
I want to save your voice. I'm only doing it to save your voice. So basically, the long and the short is Gamora now hunted down Thanos, and she got it in her head that it was better that she take the Infinity Gauntlet to sort of prevent him from doing his craziness. There was this whole big Infinity War thing. She, instead of killing off half of the universe, she merges the universe. So she cuts down the population by merging everybody. So you got things like the Arachnite, which was Moon Knight and Spider-Man together, and you had had Dr. Stephen Strange and Steve Rogers mixed together. So you had
basically
Supreme.
Yes,
it's just
the Soldier Supreme. So
it's just Night Lantern writ large.
Yeah. I'm into it because, of course, I'm all about what if and alternate universes, and I love Amalgam, and I love all that stuff. And there were and Arachnite was cool. I actually liked the storyline. I had the books, so I think that they'd probably be chases.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, they're definitely, because they showed, I feel like maybe 10 of them, 8 of them solidly, and then there was all the, when they do big splash panels, and now you see all the other ones, and you sort of guess, oh, that's this character and this character. So I think they've got like a 6 or 8 figure core group they could do for chases, but there's definitely not enough for a set.
Dude, I'm gonna say the coolest looking chase is definitely gonna be Ghost Panther.
Yeah, Ghost Panther.
Oh my god! The image I'm looking at right here.
It's pretty cool.
I'm pulling it up right now. So
the flaming skeleton panther is pretty
hardcore.
This is
metal as hell, and I want to look at this while eating a burger in Chicago. Little inside joke. Check out Kuma's Corner. Great burger place.
But yes, I would totally be into them as chases, and I think they're totally a chase line. And I thought of that as soon as I saw them, actually, when I was reading the storyline.
Yeah. Oh man, the Ghost Rider mixed with Black Panther. That's just definitely got to happen. I would still love to see. Remember the old Amalgam comics that came out for a brief period of time post Marvel DC War?
I have them. I have them all signed by the creators. I actually saw them today because I was going through my old comics today, making sure things were actually in alphabetical order. And there were some fun ones. There was the JLX, which was a mixture of the Justice League and X-Men, which was totally cool. They had Dark Claw, which was Wolverine and Batman. They had the Amazon, which was Storm and Wonder Woman.
Yeah, that's from the Marvel vs. DC, right?
Yeah, it was like
it was Amalgam. It was Marvel and DC.
Amalgam,
they did cool stuff. They mixed
Superman and Captain America were
Patriot
or Super Patriot or whatever it was.
But they even did cooler stuff. They did Rose Wilson, Slade Wilson's daughter, mixed with Elektra. Yeah. They had so many different ones in there, man. It was actually a fun. They had Dr. Fate and Stephen Strange. Dr. Strange Fate.
Awesome.
Hilarious.
There's so much out there to.
Well, that was also why Night Lantern was my favorite character for a while, because it was so much fun to create those like semi-amalgam dials just by doing the old equip anyone thing.
Mhm.
I think that'd be neat.
I've been hoping for amalgam figures to make an appearance at some point in time, but I think again the big problem being the cross platform there, DC Marvel thing.
If the once again surfacing rumors, that would be a perfect world for HeroClix. That's all I say. All right. That said, in the Discord for our patrons, patreon.com/HeroClix, David C. wants to know how much harder is it to assess the figures when we don't know what team-up cards are out there. I feel the figures themselves are easy to assess. The potency of the team-ups becomes the differentiating factor between the cards, I think. I mean, we've seen the two, and we were able to say, like, Superman is hot garbage.
Yes.
And Lex Luthor is...
No team-up card is going to be worth it on that figure unless the team-up card says team-up, switch with a different figure.
And Lex Luthor is a pretty okay uncommon. It's just as a figure. The team-ups would just kind of help him a little.
I think it'll come down to if any of these team-ups give something really choice. You know what I'm saying? So if you've got a figure who's already a pretty good figure and a team-up gives him shape change, or gives him, like just the right thing. Or you've got a figure, you're like, man, I wish they had a move and attack power, and the team up gives a move and attack power. I think the potential is there, especially again, Superman's got at least 10 team up cards. Not that figure himself is going to be any good.
9 other chances, and there's no way. There's no hope.
Yeah.
But
have that much furniture to shim up around here.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily hard to assess the figures like Jason says, but I think you do have to just be aware of the fact that, hey, here's this extra little element that could make a B figure, maybe a B plus figure. I don't think it's going to make a C figure like an A figure, but you know what I'm saying.
Tom?
And not enough information to make an informed decision, I'm afraid. You got to assume that somewhere out there's going to be some team-up card that just works so well with the right dial that elevates it from a C to an A. But it's going to be like one thing in the whole set, and we don't know what it's going to be until it lands. So yeah,
they got to make us crazy and make us buy more product, right?
We'll be able to answer that question a lot more once we've had this experiment through at least once.
I think Scott Porter is going to be their best assessment once his unboxing comes out and we know how they're packaged for sure. Yeah. And we can see how many team up cards are in packs. That's when we can turn around and go, oh, well, you're going to get all the team up cards with a single character, whatever.
I feel like that video's coming next week because I know Scott got his brick last week. Yeah. At least because I saw him posted on Instagram. So, it's got. I just so feel like it's coming. Yeah. Follow him on Instagram, man. You'll get even more info. Yeah.
Dude, Jay knows who he is on HC Realms. So.
Well, he came. That's it. He came to Toronto when he was on the last project he was working on, and he came out to 401 Games. So we chatted a bit, got a photo together, and then we were following each other on the Instagram there. That's right. I call it the Instagram. And I call it the Facebook.
You are in your late 40s, as you've said.
I am. I am a year older than Pong.
You are gamer old.
That's it.
All right. I mean, you're way past retirement for esports.
Oh God, that's for sure.
All right.
Carpal tunnel.
In the Facebook or in the YouTube chat live, William Allen, has anyone played Skirmish, and how did the gameplay feel to you? Did any of you guys play at
Did you play, Mike? I thought you did.
Yeah, I did. I was one of the people who got drawn and actually played Skirmish at Worlds. I like the format. Obviously there were tweaks and stuff and a lot of stuff you have to figure out, but I think it was a fun way to play the game differently. The random starting areas was neat. I actually had a pretty good team and just had a couple of bad dice rolls in there, but I like the format. I think it's interesting. I think it's got a lot of potential. I think what's the best about it is it's kind of what we were talking about before about streamlining. If you want to have a really quick kind of pick up HeroClix game, like, hey, let's grab some figures real quick and let's have a quick game. That's what Skirmish feels like to me. I feel like it's something you could play in a smaller time frame, and it cuts down on all the bells and whistles, and that's why I'm sort of excited about the format. Another way to play and a quick way to play.
Mm. All right. It definitely looked hectic, like more wacky video game play, or not video game, board game play.
Yeah, it's less chess, right? Because you're really in each other's face pretty quickly. You're rolling for random starting areas. The maps are so small that like it's stuff's going to happen. They've reduced the number of actions, obviously, though, so that you're not just getting blown out of the water right away. It's a very back and forth thing, but it encourages things to happen. People aren't hiding behind barrier with the structural integrity field. No.
Yeah. And in the chat, there's been a couple WKO updates from people. My goodness, Google Hangouts is running slow for me today. The sealed WKO in Montreal, the winner had a War Machine and the Ghost Rider Chase. I hope that's just a normal War Machine and not the Chase War Machine. Just sounds like a nightmare. I also heard, I think it was Jay Major, pulled a Chase Ultron and an Ultra Chase Peggy Carter.
Oh. Get out!
Get out!
Players, you go to hell and you die.
All the players I don't want pulling that is Jay Major.
Oh my god!
Like he already walked out a winner, if you ask me.
Of course he did. Okay. I can picture the look on his face right now, like for real.
Where
you really should have pulled was a Captain Marvel because it suits his playstyle. Shredder jokes.
Ricky Yell also pointed out in Willow Grove, Captain Marvel versus Immortal Hulk was the final. Immortal Hulk took second, I guess. I can relate.
Is that just because they ran away? Is that what we're saying? Is that the final was down to those 2 points, those two pieces?
I'm just Well, the final was down to those two pieces, and Captain Marvel won.
Yeah,
specifically said that.
Understood.
And Kenji pointed out he liked Popper as a breath of fresh air. All right, it looks like we're pretty done with questions. So, on that note, Tom, thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for joining me. All right.
Always.
I want to thank our sponsors of MajesticCCG.com. Join the Apex Insiders for $3 a month. You get brain dumps from some of the greatest players in the game of HeroClix. And just check out the site on a regular basis. There are updates to the game. This is also the home of the Bronze Age, as we mentioned earlier today. If you're looking for an interesting way to play and to see how the meta game is mounting up on that. Also want to thank our supporters over at patreon.com/marriedwithclicks. You guys help keep us going and give these guys a little bit of a bonus every so often when I remember to send them money on PayPal. On that note, once again, thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for joining us in the chat and live and in the archive if you're watching later on. Guys, TikTok. We got Nationals coming around the corner for the U.S. Canadian Nationals are probably not too far away. Worlds is coming in October. We have dates. We know sets are coming out. Get those teams together. Get some ideas together and get some practice, because practice will make your team better. Have a good night, everybody.